day out there to all of my listeners. I'd like to wish you a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. This is the holiday season, and I just want to greet you all with that. And I would like to welcome those new listeners to Is Your Way in Your Way podcast. And I'm your host, and my name is Cassandra Crawley Mayo. And the title of my podcast is the same title as my book, Is Your Way in Your Way. It's actually a self-discovery guide for women on how to restore yourself. Learn from your experiences and be your true self again. It's actually we talk about topics related to personal improvement, personal development, business improvement, and also it's going to enable you to do some self-reflection. And also these individuals that are stuck. There's certain things you want to do in your life and you've not been able to do it. Maybe you want to write a book. Maybe you need to get out of a toxic relationship. Perhaps you want to move, you want to be promoted. It's just a number of things that your soul is calling you to do, and you've not been able to do it. And today I want to talk about, because of the holidays today, I want to talk about how to navigate grief during the holidays. And that in itself can keep you stuck. That has a whole gamut of emotions with that. And I just felt compelled to talk about that this holiday season. And my special guest that's going to talk about that with us name is Ebony Gibson. Hi, Ebony. How are you?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing great. And I just want to thank you. Thank you for being a guest on my podcast today. And Ebony, during the holidays can be so challenging, for challenging time for those grieving. And before we get started on our interview, I want to just give a little background on you so that my guests will just have a little history about you to see what qualifies you to be a grieving coach. Okay. Ebony is dedicated to grief coach, and she's the founder of Can I Grieve? It's a company providing compassionate support and resources for those navigating loss. Inspired by her own healing journey, Ebony's, after her mother unexpectedly passed in 2017, she became a beacon of hope for others, creating safe spaces to process grief. She's actually a South Out speaker. She empowers audiences at women's empowerment events and grief forums with her heartfelt insights. She's on a mission, and her mission is to help individuals embrace healing with courage, compassion, and resilience. So, Ebony, for someone who is experiencing profound loss during the holidays, what would you say to help them feel seen and understood?
Yes. So, first, the thing that people have to understand about grief is that it's a very individual journey and experience. You could experience the same type of loss, but the whole experience is totally different. And so it makes it even more complicated when we talk about the holidays, right? Because that's a time where um, your person, whoever you may have lost, is no
Mm-hmm.
longer here. And it's more
Mm-hmm.
obvious than usual, right? Because they
Yeah.
won't be at the Thanksgiving like we just had dinner. They won't be at the Christmas party or brunch or whatever, your family tradition is. And so I think it's important for people who are grieving and maybe people who aren't grieving to just be kind to others, because we never know what the next person is going through, and especially during this holiday season. But more importantly, to be kind to yourself as well if you are grieving. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
really important during the holidays to set boundaries. This is a time where there are a lot of friendsgiving and Christmas parties, holiday parties with the jobs, and sometimes, it can be overwhelming, right? Just thinking about going to these different type of events can bring on anxiety and overwhelming feelings. However, I think it's important to put boundaries in place. So it's okay to attend these events. It's also
Hmm.
to not attend these events.
Yeah.
It's okay to leave early. It's okay to host Christmas if you want to, or like I've been saying for the last couple of weeks, there's Uber Eats now. We're in a new generation, we're in a different time. You don't have to.
Excuse me.
Bless you. You can order Uber Eats. You can go out to eat. There's so many different things that we can do. So I just think during the holiday season, you have to prioritize self-care, which is putting yourself first, which is putting boundaries in place, and which is being okay with creating something different. It's okay to go outside of the norm.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't want to keep going.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's talk about boundaries because we hear a lot about boundaries. How would you talk with somebody that, well, needs to understand what boundaries mean? They're in this space where they're just grieving and they just don't know what boundaries may work for them. How could you navigate them to try to figure out, well, what's best for them? Because you have people that say, oh, it's okay. It's kind of like, you know, people don't know what to say.
Mhm.
So what are some boundaries you would suggest or can suggest for individuals that are going through grieving during the holidays?
Absolutely. When I think about boundaries, I think about protection, like protecting yourself, and at the end of the day, this is a challenging time. Grief is challenging in itself, but like I said, you add the holidays, bless you.
Mhm.
You
Thank
add
you.
the holidays and it's even more challenging. And so I think when it comes to boundaries, just doing whatever feels good to you and turning away from whatever doesn't. A lot of times we're expected, especially as women, to be the strong person, the strong
Mhm.
friend. And unfortunately, that's just not a title that we need to accept, especially during the holidays and during grief. It's okay to be vulnerable, but at the same time, it makes sense to put these boundaries in place so that you can protect yourself and so that you can help other people help you. One of the biggest things that I think, people need to do, and I always encourage my clients to do, is to advocate for yourself during grief. There are people that want to support you, people that want to help you, and maybe they're doing it offensively without knowing,
Mhm.
right? And so the best thing
Mhm.
that you can do as someone that's going through grief is tell people how to show up for you. And again, this goes back to the protection, right? If
Yeah.
it's going to be overwhelming for you and you go to an event, you let them know, hey, I may come, but I might leave early, or hey, this is too much for me to handle. I'm not going to come. That again is putting boundaries in place because again, what did I say? Boundaries means to me protection.
Hmm. Hmm. Ebony, this is such a sensitive matter.
Hmm.
And I am curious, and I know my listeners are, why did you decide to be a coach for those who are grieving?
That's a good question. I always get asked that question. And honestly, I just truly believe the experiences that we have in life, they don't happen to us for no reason. I believe that everything happens for a reason. And for some people, that may be a hard pill to swallow. But I
Yeah.
believe my mother's passing was not supposed to go in vain. And I believe even the other losses that I've experienced, death related and non death related, they're supposed to be shared. And I believe that God allowed me to come out on the other side, and so I felt a responsibility to help other people do the same. I know in the Black community, therapy is frowned upon, or grief
Mhm.
counseling is just now becoming normal for people to say
Yeah.
I'm going in therapy and different things like that. And so I just felt during the pandemic when grief was at an all-time high,
Yeah.
I was supposed to launch my company, and God has guided me, over the last 3 years on which direction to go. But I just truly believe, like I said, the things that happen to us in life, they're supposed to be shared. And because I was able to come out on the other side, I feel obligated to help other people. When my mom passed away, I was 22 at the time. I'm 30 now. A lot of my
Mhm.
peers didn't experience, losing a parent at that age. Um,
Yeah.
and I just always felt like whenever they would lose a parent, like I got to be the first one to give them some advice. I got to say something, And so another, thing that inspired me was just understanding everybody doesn't always have a support system. For me, I
Mm.
did. That is another reason why I was
Yeah.
able to come out on that side. And so I just believe I exist to be a light in another
Okay.
term.
Okay. Okay. Good. That's good. So you took that opportunity and your perspective was changed. How?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what are some things you did to I don't think we ever overcome, but you're the coach. I'm not sure.
Right.
There's not a day that I don't think about my parents. I think
Hmm.
about them every day. It's just amazing to me, particularly during this time of year. And I
Absolutely.
always say, well, Christmas is not the same, Thanksgiving is
Mhm.
not the same. And I'll confess, the first year after they passed, when the holidays were coming, I was miserable, you
Right.
know. And so, what are some things that you did or learned during the grieving period? Or is there's like you said, everybody's different. Some
Mhm.
people may it hit them real hard, and some people may like, mm, yeah. Then they some of them hit hard because they have guilt.
Right.
Could be right.
Mhm.
What are some other things that individuals can do to kind of not suppress it, but to feel better or get through it? I'll say
Right.
to get through it.
Absolutely. Well, as I stated before, grief is an individual experience.
Hmm.
And so people have to do whatever works for them. For me, per se, I leaned in on my support system. I had a lot of
Okay.
support from friends and family.
Okay.
I literally couldn't count on one hand how many dinners and
Hmm.
plans people were making for me and cooking for me. And I was open to it. Sometimes
Hmm.
people rather be isolated. And again, that's totally,
Hmm.
up to that person. But I leaned in on my friends and family for support. I had people stay with me. Um,
Mm.
I would say maybe in year number 4 or
Yeah.
5, I can't remember what year it was. I attended Grief Share through my church, which is a program that a lot of churches offer. And it's a
Hmm.
faith-based support group, if you will, but for grief. And so different churches,
Hmm.
like I said, offer that program. And that
Hmm.
really helped me get a better understanding about grief and from a biblical standpoint.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important, that people do seek support, whether they feel like they're handling it, the right way or the wrong way. Because
Hmm.
it's really been helpful. And I know, like I said, in our community, it's not normal, to see a grief counselor or to talk to someone, a therapist. It's just becoming a thing. And I feel like back in 2017, when my mother passed away, it wasn't normal. And not only was it not normal, I just wasn't comfortable. And that was just my own misconception. Knowing what I know now, I would have been went,
Yeah.
to talk to somebody, but it was just my own perception because I didn't know any better. And so
Okay.
I say all that to say, lean in on your support system if you have one. If
Okay.
not, there are a bunch of organizations and support groups that you can join, where you can be in the vicinity with people who have experienced what you lost. That way,
Yeah.
you find some type of support and comfort knowing you're not crazy, knowing you're not the only person
Hmm.
that has been through this. So leaning in to your support system. If you don't have one, like I said, there are organizations, there are groups,
Okay.
people that want to support you because they've been through what you've been through. Seeking support, whether it's through church, like I said, through Grief Share, whether it's through a
Okay.
grief counselor or therapist, has
Okay.
really been helpful. For
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. What about individuals that have this guilt?
Hmm.
How do you, I would say, coach, or what do you tell people that are so, that are just guilty? They're guilty. Maybe I didn't see my parent enough, or my
Hmm.
son, or I didn't do this. Um, I should have said I'm sorry to my dad and I didn't. And how do you deal with, how should individuals deal with what you suggest, the guilt part of the passing?
Yeah, so guilt is a very common emotion that people
Mhm.
feel when going through grief for different reasons, like you just stated. It also reminds me of the bargaining stage. So there are 5 different stages of grief. One of those
Mhm.
stages is called the bargaining stage, where you kind of go back and forth with, if only I had done this, or I should have done this. And so, with that being said, you asked, I'm trying to remember the question because I went left a little bit. You were
Uh-huh.
saying, how do people deal with the guilt, or how can people overcome the guilt?
I want to say, yeah, how do they overcome the guilt? And they may not ever overcome, but they feel better about it,
Right.
because guilt can be it's gripping. It could, it's a cancer.
Yeah. So I typically have my clients write a letter to
Mhm.
their self, to their loved one, to whatever the thing is that they feel guilty about, because oftentimes it's in our head, it's not reality. And so sometimes when you write out on paper why you feel guilty or
Mhm.
what you're feeling guilty for, you realize that you actually did do all that you could do,
Mhm.
and so it helps take some of that pressure off you. I had a client who her husband had passed away, and she felt like she should have done more health wise. But once she wrote out how she was at every doctor's appointment, how she picked up his prescriptions, how she slept at the hospital, then she was able to
Yeah.
remove that guilt because, again,
Okay.
grief we get in our heads. And so sometimes the
Right.
guilt that we're carrying is not even our guilt to carry.
Wow. Wow. Um, what, because it's nearing the end of the year,
Hmm.
right? And people do a lot of reflection. The end of the year, the first of the year. Um, what do you think? What's the most powerful thing someone grieving can do for themselves at the end of the year, entering a new year with hope?
Ooh, that's a good one. Um, I think that people should figure out, what do they need to let go of so that
Hmm.
they can move forward?
Hmm.
There's a lot of things that people don't realize that they should grieve over because they feel like it's not a death, so it's not important. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions that people have when it comes to grief. It's only death. And even your job will tell you, if it's not immediate family, we don't care, basically.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
people don't understand that friendship breakups, relationship breakups, job loss, health diagnosis, all of these different things that people experience are valid experiences that people
Yes.
need to work through in
Yeah.
order to move forward. And so I think, as you talk about, going into the new year, what are those things that we need to let go of? Is it procrastination? Is it who I
Mhm.
thought I would be? I'm 30. I thought I would be a homeowner by now. I'm not. Does that mean that that's the end of the world? No. That could be
Mhm.
social media telling me that I'm supposed to have all these things and be all of these things. So, what is it that I need to let go of in order so that I can flourish and become the person that I'm supposed to be becoming?
That's very good. I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot of people think grieving is the loss of a loved one, and it's the
Mhm.
loss of a whole lot of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the
Anything,
broken, yeah,
anything
yeah,
that you feel
relationship.
connected to.
Oh,
Hmm.
absolutely, absolutely. So it's
Hmm.
not just the loss of a loved one. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. Um, Now, when a lot of people struggle with when somebody passes, a friend of theirs, somebody close to a friend. What do they say? What have you found that individuals should say to a person who's lost someone?
That's a great question. A lot of people struggle with that, and that's why some people stay away, right? Because it's like, I don't know
Mhm.
what to say. And I know,
Mhm.
especially speaking for women, we're nurturers and we want to fix things. And unfortunately, grief is something that, it can't be fixed. And so when we
Right.
talk about what to say, there's a bunch of different things that you can say, and sometimes it's not even about what you say, it's just being there. Sometimes somebody might want you to just come and just sit. It may not be anything that you can say, but the fact that you just showed up and just sat with them, could make
Yeah.
all the difference. So I think people should get out of their head, and stop focusing on what's the right thing to say and just show
Uh-huh.
it. And,
Uh-huh.
even if it's not, what's the right thing to say, I always tell people, offer suggestions. When you're going through grief, like I said, your brain is all over the place. You can't even think, you don't even know what today
Mhm.
is. And so when
Mhm.
someone
Mhm.
asks you, hey, can I stop by, and just sit with you? Or, hey, I want to order you dinner, or even they cook for you, or even they
Yeah.
come over and do your laundry for you. They watch the kids so you can take a break. I think it's really about offering suggestions versus
Mhm.
what do I say? Because at the end of
Okay.
the day, there's truly nothing that you can say that will
Okay.
make that person feel better. But if you listen without judgment, I think that's helpful. And if you're
Mhm.
offering to do things like making sure they're eating their laundry, they have time to themselves, you watch the kids,
Mhm.
then I think that makes more of a difference than what
Mhm.
do I say. I think
Yeah.
it's what do I do versus
Yeah.
what I say.
Yeah. That's good. I remember it was actually a cousin of mine, and it's probably I wouldn't say the first time somebody close to me had passed, but because we were related, um, I said something that I'll never forget, and she looked at me like something's wrong. Like, why would you ask that? And my question was, what can I do for you?
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at me like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh no, I did something wrong. So when I left her, I talked to my mom about it, and she was like, they don't know. That's not really good to ask all the
Mm-hmm.
time. With some people, you just need to just be careful, because at that was her first experience losing a parent. And I'm gonna say, what can I do for you? She's like, I don't know. And I'm thinking I'm helping because okay, whatever you want me to do, whatever you want me to
Mm-hmm.
do. And she literally didn't know. And I learned from that just either being there, like you indicated, taking something. I also read the other day that for some people, it's okay when someone passes to talk about them, say something funny they did or
Mm-hmm.
what they remembered. Because a lot of times people say, I'm not going to say anything about them. I'm not going to say a word
Right.
about them because that may be too sensitive. That's too close. What do you think about that? Like when you go over someone's house, like people I remember like when my mom passed and people would say funny stories about her
Mm-hmm.
things that she did for them or with them or whatever. And it did make me laugh, but
Yeah.
some people may not be comfortable doing that. What do you think about that one?
I think it's interesting, right? Because as I'll keep reiterating, grief is such an individual experience.
Okay.
So there are people that are waiting, literally holding their breath, waiting for moments to talk about their loved one, for someone to say something about it. And then there are other people that prefer not to talk about it. It may be too much for them or just
Okay.
a constant reminder. But then you
Okay.
have people, like I said, that they want to talk about it themselves. They're not even waiting for you to bring it up. They're waiting
Mhm.
to bring it up, at the right time. And so I think just being mindful of maybe who that person is, or maybe even asking a question, I wanted to share a special memory, about your loved one. Is it okay if I do so? Or something funny,
Mhm.
you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Just kind of like
Mhm.
asking, because you don't know how that person is going to respond. They may get upset or they may start busting out laughing,
Right,
depending on what's
exactly.
said. So, yeah, I think just
Okay.
being mindful and maybe
Okay.
asking before doing so.
Yeah, okay. I'm
Yeah.
in a ministry at my church, and the ministry is called the Epistle Ministry, where we write letters.
Okay.
And, so every week we'll get a list of names. They'll put your name correspond with this person. And that's somebody that perhaps lost a loved one, someone's sick, or someone a child, a parent. It's a number of things that we write to. And I remember when I first got into ministry, I struggled with that because
Hmm.
I didn't know them. And I was like, this is weird. I don't know these people. So what do I say? And as you indicated, everybody grieves differently.
Hmm.
And so I just prayed about it, and I thought about, well, what I want someone to say to me. They don't even know me.
Hmm. Hmm.
And to find out that a lot of people we would write the letters, they would write a letter back and thank
Hmm.
us. for the encouragement, for somebody thinking about them, even people they didn't know, and how much they appreciated that. And that was just very touching because like I said, I did it from my heart, and I was hopeful, that something was said, and sometimes I'll wait until the person has passed, like maybe a month, and then I write the letter. Been thinking about you by this time. I hope you're feeling a little better about your loved one, or someone has said something that reminded you of them and made you laugh or something like that. And then they will write and appreciate that, because I always say when the, when it happens for me, it was so surreal, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is, and I even remember with my parents, I wailed. I literally wailed. And I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that, but it says that in the Bible. And I always wonder, wail, what is that? I literally just wailed and wailed and wailed. And I was like, oh my gosh, what was that about? But it was like that deep grief that just the loss of them. I was like, it just like hit me like that. And I was, and I learned from that. And furthermore, I understood wailing, and I got it. I got it. It was so deep. And then with the loss of, someone who someone has lost, but then when you have lost someone, you have a deeper sense of, for me, compassion, because growing up, back in those days, I'm aging myself, but when somebody on our block would pass away, my mom or somebody in the block would take charge, go to each other's house, go to somebody's house, write a note, give them food, give them money, and then my mom would take it to their home. And I was like, that's kind of weird. Growing up, I'm like, that's strange. But those were the things that they did. And the money part, I'm like, now why are they giving them money? Just being naive. And yeah, just being naive. And that was just the tradition back then. I'm not certain what people, well, I guess in my community, I would do the same thing, but I would knock on people's doors, because when growing up, we knew everybody. Everybody was community, everybody was the village. Yeah. So I don't know whether, when you have your coaching, do you coach groups or individuals, or both?
I do both.
Okay. Which one of those, how do you decide which one to do?
I've only done group coaching once.
Okay.
Most of my clients that I see now are individual, and maybe it's because I don't have a group for them to join. I don't know.
Okay.
But I don't mind doing individual. I feel like when I start to, we're going to claim it, when I start to get too many clients, then I will move to group. But I genuinely enjoy working with the individuals that I have. Because individual, and this is the difference between individual and group. An individual is all about you. In the group, it's like you and everybody else, so we're not able to personally coach you per se. It's for the group, if that makes sense. So you'll get the understanding of grief and how to navigate it and all that, but from a personal viewpoint, what you yourself need, you're not going to get that in the group.
That's a good point. Have you coached somebody? What's the longest you've coached somebody for grief, and what's the shortest time? Because as you indicated, everybody's different.
Right. So normally I work with my clients for 12 weeks.
Okay.
And then I'm sad when they leave, but some of them do come back. The shortest I would probably say is 8 weeks.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's great. That's good. If you could, well, let me ask you, Ebony, what else do you do, or what's next for you? Do you think you'll be this grief counselor for a while? Because it probably ministers to you as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for you to be a grief counselor, I commend you. That to me is it doesn't remind me, but it makes me think of hospice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how I'm just like in awe for individuals that have that gift, and that's something
Mhm.
that they want to give back.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, yeah. During the holiday season, now that it's the holidays, um, what could you like to my listeners? What's a message of encouragement or insight for them to carry through the holiday season?
Mm. Be gentle with yourself.
Mhm.
Know that this is not a journey that you have to walk alone. There are people that will walk the journey with you, whether they are directly blood related to you or not.
Mhm. Mhm.
Have compassion, not just for yourself, but for others as well. Be okay, with making plans, but be okay with changing the plans too.
Mm.
Um, know that this is a time where you can be sad. You can always be sad. You don't need a day to be sad, but know that this is a time where your grief is
Mhm.
valid. It's valid in general, but it's even more prominent and present during the holidays. So know you're not crazy, for
Mhm.
feeling any type of way. I don't care if it's the first year or it's been
Mhm.
30 years. The grief is
Mhm.
always valid. And as I stated during the holidays, it's even more present. And so just know that it is okay to grieve. It doesn't matter the time frame or the period. Um,
Mhm.
know, like I said, that this isn't a journey that you have to walk alone. Lean
Mhm.
into your support system. You know, pray. If you're a
Mhm.
spiritual being, pray. Look what the verses say. About grief and how to navigate that journey. Um, that's all I can think of for now.
Mhm. That's good.
Yeah.
That's very good. That's good.
And
How?
honor your loved one. Honor your loved one. If there were certain traditions and things that you guys used to do, and you feel like you want to carry that on, then do that. But if
Mhm.
you do not feel like you want to cook or whatever you guys used to do, then
Yeah.
that's okay not to do that and create new traditions too. I think that's super, super important when we do talk about grief and the holidays, because like I said, it can be overwhelming. So just finding ways to make this time more manageable for you. That's what the word is when you were asking earlier. You don't, get over it or whatever. I think it's manageable. How do we make this
Mhm. Yeah,
manageable?
that's a
It's
good
not
one.
going anywhere. So we have to grow. We have to do the work in order to make it more manageable for us.
Right. So, in other words, show yourself some compassion, right? No expectations. People
Mm.
like, well, I should have gotten over it by this. Oh, I always go there. So I loved it when you say you set your boundaries. You do what's good for you to do. Don't do it because you think this is what somebody else wants you to do.
Right.
Um, that's not good. And I think as a society and as we've grown up, people have expectations of us, so we figure we have to meet those expectations. But no, it's about what's good for you.
That's good.
And so I like that. And even when people say, well, you need to get out of the house, you need to do this,
Mhm.
if you don't feel like getting out the house, don't get out of the house. Well, I
Right.
don't want you to be alone. Okay, well, then maybe you go the next day and see them, So it's no, as you indicate, I love it when you said that everybody grieves differently. There's no checklist.
Yes. Yes.
We got to go by checklist. We got to do this. We got to do that. Just being there for them, I think, is very, very important. And how could my listeners get in touch with you, Ebony?
Yes. So online, my website is canigrieve.org. I am also on Facebook and Instagram at Can I Grieve.
Mhm.
And my email is info@canigrieve.org.
Hmm. Now, do you do virtual coaching?
I do. I do. I
Okay.
don't have an actual location.
Okay.
And I left that, right? Low overhead costs
Yeah.
for a business owner. But also the fact that I'm able to service more people because I
Yeah.
am pool. So obviously I'm in Maryland. I think you're in Maryland too.
Uh-huh.
I'm able to, I've had clients in Texas,
Uh-huh.
and in different states. So I love that I am blessed.
Okay. Okay. Well, that is great. That is great. Um, I want to thank you again. I want to wish my listeners Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. And if they're not happy holidays for you this year, that's okay.
Yeah.
Don't feel bad about it. I mean, you know, that is okay. And I'm hopeful that Ebony provided some information, some strategies, some tools that you can use to help you manage. I like that. Help you manage through this process. And please feel free to reach out. Nobody's knowing that you may be the one to reach out. You may feel just better having it virtual, not having to go anywhere, talking to
Right.
somebody that doesn't even know you, that you can just spill out your feelings, your heart, because I know you'll be in a safe space, in a safe place when you speak with Ebony. And so, again, listeners and Ebony, I always say bye for now. I never say goodbye. And I say, God bless you. And just bye for now. And again, Ebony, thank you so much. And God bless you as well.
Thank you so much.